I drove somewhere else. I knew something was wrong the second the room went quiet around me. Not silent, just thinner, like the air had shifted, like I was standing in the middle of a sentence nobody wanted to finish. The music was still playing, glasses were still clinking. Somebody laughed near the bar, but right there where I stood, holding my purse with both hands, it felt like the night leaned away from me. I'm 72 years old. I've lived long enough to recognize that feeling. A young woman in black stepped closer, camera strap across her shoulder, eyes avoiding mine. "Miss Loretta," she said softly. "Yes, baby." She glanced around, lowered her voice. "Can I talk to you for a moment, somewhere private?" I smiled because that's what I've always done when I don't understand yet. "Of course." We stepped into a side hallway just off the reception floor, white walls. Framed photos of smiling couples who didn't look like they'd ever had their hearts cracked open mid-celebration. She swallowed hard. "I need to let you know the bride asked that you not be included in the family photos." I laughed. Just a short sound, confused, not amused. "What do you mean, not included?" She pressed her lips together. She said she wants the photos to have a certain look. A pause, then quieter. "She said you don't photograph well." I stared at her, not because I hadn't heard her, because my mind refused to accept it. "I'm sorry," she rushed. "I didn't want to say it like that. I tried to suggest." "It's okay," I said. My voice sounded calm, steady, like it belonged to someone else. Down the hallway I could see the reception through glass doors. My granddaughter, no, not granddaughter anymore, not tonight, was spinning in a white dress, laughing like nothing in the world could touch her. I'd helped pay for that laugh. I'd helped pay for the room, the band, the flowers climbing the walls like money had roots. But suddenly I wasn't pretty enough to belong in the memory. "Thank you for telling me," I said. She looked relieved and ashamed at the same time. I walked back toward the reception. Each step felt heavier, like my heels were sinking into carpet made of wet sand. Nobody stopped me, nobody noticed. I didn't cry, not then. I walked past the cake, 5 tiers, gold trim. I remembered the check I'd written when she said, "It's just a little over budget, Nana." Past the dance floor, past the bar. Past people who'd toasted love while standing on money that wasn't theirs. I went straight outside. The night air hit my face, cool and honest. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, heart loud in my ears. 72 years old. I had survived childbirth, a bad marriage, burying my husband, raising kids on a paycheck that never stretched far enough. And this was the thing that finally broke something open. I started the engine. And instead of driving home, the bank was closed. Of course it was. Saturday night, the kind of night meant for champagne and pretending everything is perfect. I parked anyway. Sat there with the engine running, staring at the glowing ATM like it was about to confess something I already knew. My phone buzzed in my purse. I didn't look. I already knew who it was. She only called when she needed something. I turned the engine off, stepped out, and walked up to the machine. The screen lit my face in a pale blue glow that made me look older than I felt and younger than the woman I'd been pretending to be for years. I checked my account. There it was, a scheduled transfer, Monday morning, $8,000, her honeymoon. She'd sat at my kitchen table 3 weeks earlier, tapping her nails against her phone. "Nana, it's just one time," she said. "We're trying to start our life right." I remembered how proud she'd looked when she said that, like adulthood was something she was owed, not earned. I remembered all the other times too. The senior trip in high school I paid for but never heard about again. The emergency rent when she first moved out. The laptop for her new job that never seemed to last. The way she hugged me quick, already halfway gone. I pulled out my phone and called the bank's after-hours line. When the representative answered, her voice was polite, distant, professional. "I need to cancel a scheduled transfer," I said. She asked for details. I gave them. "May I ask why?" she said. I paused because this was the moment, the exact moment where I either kept lying to myself or stopped. "The conditions changed," I said. "I no longer wish to give it." She didn't argue, didn't question. "Just typed." "One moment," she said. I watched the screen reflect in the ATM glass, an older black woman with good posture and tired eyes, a woman who had spent too long confusing love with obligation. "It's been canceled," she said. Just like that, I hung up, sat back in the car, and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding for years. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't wondering what I could do to be worthy of love. I was wondering why I ever thought money could buy it. I drove home slowly, through streets I knew by heart, past houses that held more truth than that ballroom ever did. Inside my quiet living room, I made tea and sat alone at the table. And that's when the anger finally softened into something else. Understanding, not about her, about me. And the silence that followed, that deep, honest silence, was louder than any music I'd left behind. And firm Sunday morning came quiet. No hangover, no headache, just that deep, bone-level tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, it comes from finally seeing something you spent years refusing to name. I sat at my kitchen table with my tea, sunlight slipping through the blinds, landing on a framed photo across the room. Her at 12, gap-toothed smile, arms wrapped around my waist. I used to think that was proof. Love frozen in time, like it couldn't change, like it couldn't thin out or turn transactional. But love that only shows up when money's involved isn't love. It's convenience dressed up in family language. I thought back, not in anger. In clarity, she'd always been charming, bright, knew how to tilt her head, soften her voice, knew how to make a request sound like a shared dream. Nana, I hate asking, but Nana, you're the only one who understands. Nana, I promise I'll make it up to you, and I believed her. Every time, because I wanted to be the kind of grandmother people talk about with pride, the one who held it down, the one who never said no. What I didn't realize was that every yes taught her something. That my boundaries were optional, that my feelings were secondary, that my presence was negotiable as long as the money stayed consistent. I remembered the way she'd rush visits, 5 minutes on the couch, phone in hand, eyes already gone. How long can you stay? I'd ask. Not long, Nana, busy day, busy life, busy love, and I let it slide because I thought asking for more would make me needy, old, difficult. That's how women like me get trained, especially black women. Be strong, be giving, don't complain, don't ask to be chosen. So I paid and paid and paid. And when I finally needed one thing, just one thing, it was apparently too much. Just be in the picture, just be seen. My phone rang around noon. I didn't answer. I already knew the script. Panic first, anger next. Apologies later, only if the money didn't come through. I wasn't ready for her voice yet. I was still listening to my own. And for the first time in years, it wasn't whispering. It was steady. Clear, Monday morning, 9:07 a.m. I remember the time because I looked at the clock before I answered, like some part of me already knew this moment mattered. Her name lit up the screen. I waited 3 rings, then I picked up. Nana, her voice came through sharp, breathless. Something's wrong, the payment didn't go through. No greeting, no checking in, no how are you, straight to the issue. I leaned back in my chair. That's right. Silence. What do you mean that's right? She said. The resort just called. They said the transfer was canceled. Yes, I said. It was. Her breath hitched. But you promised. There it was. The word she thought still held me. I did, I said calmly. And you promised I was family. Another pause. I don't understand, she said. This is about the photos, isn't it? So she knew. She'd known the whole time. You told someone I wasn't fit to be seen, I said. After I helped pay for your wedding. That's not what I meant, she rushed. I just wanted everything to look right. And I didn't, I asked. She didn't answer. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't accuse, didn't insult. I just told the truth. I've decided I'm not generous enough to fund a life where I don't belong. Her voice cracked. Nana, please, we already booked everything. That was your choice. This is cruel, she said. I smiled sadly. No, I said. What was cruel happened before the money stopped. She started crying then, real crying or strategic crying. I didn't know, I didn't care. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't think. That's the problem, I said gently. You didn't. I ended the call before she could say anything else, not because I was angry, because I was done explaining why I deserved dignity. And as I set the phone down, something unexpected happened. I didn't feel empty. I felt taller, like I'd finally stood up inside myself, and that feeling was just the beginning. After I hung up, the house felt louder than usual, not with noise but with memory. Every corner held a version of me that had swallowed something down and called it love. I walked into the living room and sat on the couch, the same one she'd perched on 100 times, purse on her lap, already half gone. I let myself rewind, not to punish her, to finally be honest with myself. There was the time she needed money for her last semester. Said financial aid fell through. I sent it without asking questions. Later found out she'd switched majors and stayed an extra year, never mentioned it. There was the birthday she skipped because she was too busy. I watched her post party pictures that same night, tagged friends, tagged locations, didn't tag me. There was the Christmas she asked for cash instead of coming over. Said she'd visit later, she didn't. Each memory landed like a soft knock, not loud enough to wake me back then, but impossible to ignore now. I realized something that made my chest tighten. She hadn't changed. I had just stopped pretending. That afternoon, my daughter called. Her tone was tight, already defensive. "Mom, what happened?" I didn't rush, I didn't explain everything. "I was excluded from the photos," I said. "After helping pay." "She didn't mean it like that," my daughter said quickly. "You know how weddings are." I closed my eyes. That sentence right there, that sentence had protected bad behavior for years. "Do you hear yourself?" I asked softly. "She took my money and erased me. She's young," she said. "She made a mistake. She made a choice," I said, "and I'm allowed to respond to it." There was silence then. "Are you really going to punish her over this?" "Punish, not protect, not set boundaries. Punish." "I'm not punishing anyone," I said. "I'm stopping." That was when I realized something else. It wasn't just my granddaughter who had learned this pattern, it was generational, and I was the one expected to keep absorbing it. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't argue. I just said, "I love you, but I won't be treated like this anymore." She didn't like that, but discomfort doesn't mean wrong. That night I slept deeply, no guilt dreams, no second guessing, just rest. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't bracing myself for the next ask. A few days later, I sat across from a man who'd known me for years. My attorney. He adjusted his glasses, reading the notes I'd handed him. "You're certain?" he asked gently. "I've never been more certain," I said. We talked through everything slowly, what I wanted, what I didn't, what I was no longer willing to fund with silence. He explained things carefully, not in legal language meant to intimidate, but in plain words that respected my intelligence. "You can decide who benefits from your life," he said. "That includes who doesn't." That sentence settled deep. Because nobody ever says that out loud to women like me, especially older ones, especially black ones. We're taught to endure, to excuse, to give until giving becomes our entire identity. I signed the paperwork with steady hands. Not out of revenge, out of clarity. Walking out of that office, I felt the weight of grief hit me all at once. Not grief for what I'd lost, grief for what I'd hoped for, the version of her that might have loved me without needing something. I cried in my car for a few minutes, not loud, not dramatic, just honest. Then I wiped my face, looked in the mirror, and said something I'd never said before. I matter too, and that truth was about to change everything that came next. I didn't announce my decision. I didn't post anything, didn't explain myself to extended family, didn't send a final message asking to be understood. I just stopped. No answering late-night calls, no responding to texts that started with "Hey Nana" and ended with a request. No opening emails heavy with apology and light on accountability. At first, the silence felt unnatural. Like I was doing something wrong simply by not reacting, but after a week something unexpected happened. The quiet started to feel clean, no emotional whiplash, no stomach drop when the phone buzzed. No rehearsing conversations that never led anywhere. Then came the pressure. A cousin called. "She's really hurting, you know." A church friend pulled me aside. "Family is family." Even my daughter tried again, softer this time. "She's embarrassed." She didn't realize how deep this went. I listened. Then I asked one simple question. Where was all this concern when I was being erased? Nobody had an answer, because it's easier to pressure the person who's always been strong than confront the one causing harm. That's how these cycles survive, but I was done carrying it. 3 weeks later, she showed up at my door, no warning, no call ahead. I watched through the window as she stood there, perfect posture, careful outfit, face practiced in humility. I didn't move. She knocked once, then again. "Nana," she called softly, "I know you're home." I stayed seated. Minutes passed, her voice changed. "I made a mistake," she said. "I know that now." I almost opened the door. Not because I believed her, but because some habits are hard to break. But then she said the one thing that stopped me cold. "I never thought you'd take it this far." There it was, not "I hurt you," not "I was wrong." But I didn't think there would be consequences. I stayed silent. Eventually, she left a note in my mailbox. I didn't read it, because apologies that come from fear of loss, not understanding, aren't apologies, they're negotiations. And I wasn't negotiating my dignity anymore. With the money I didn't give away, I did something radical. I used it on me, not responsibly, not practically. Joyfully, I took a trip I'd postponed for years. Bought clothes I liked, not ones meant to blend into the background, joined a painting class even though I'd never painted before. At first, it felt indulgent. Then it felt right. The women in that class didn't know my history. Didn't see me as a wallet, they saw me as funny, curious, sharp. One afternoon, one of them said, "You have a peaceful energy." I laughed. Peace hadn't always been part of my vocabulary, but it was now. And it had a price I was finally willing to pay. Months later, I heard she'd been telling her version, that I'd changed, that I'd turned cold, that I cared more about money than family. I didn't correct her. Because people who listen to one side only hear what they're ready for. What mattered was the truth I lived every day. I slept well, I laughed more, I stopped shrinking, and slowly I stopped missing the version of her that never really existed. The real loss wasn't money, it was the illusion. The belief that giving endlessly guaranteed love, that being useful made me valuable. Letting go of that hurt, but it also freed me, because love that costs your self-respect isn't love. It's a transaction you didn't agree to. It happened almost a year later. By then, my life had settled into something steady, not perfect, not dramatic, just honest. I had routines again, morning walks. A standing coffee date with a friend from my art class. Sundays that felt full instead of heavy. That's when the message came. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. I usually did, but something habit maybe made me open it. "Nana, it's me. I got a new phone. I know I shouldn't be reaching out, but I don't know who else to turn to." I stared at the screen for a long time. The words were careful, soft, meant to disarm. She went on, "Things are really bad right now. We're behind on bills. I'm scared. I know I hurt you and I'll regret that forever. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm just asking for help." There it was again, not accountability, not understanding, need. I set the phone down and stood up, pacing the living room. A year ago, that message would have broken me. I would have focused on the fear in her words instead of the pattern behind them. But now, I could see it clearly. She wasn't reaching out because she'd changed. She was reaching out because the safety net was gone. I sat back down and thought carefully about what I wanted to say, if I wanted to say anything at all. I didn't owe her silence. But I also didn't owe her access. I typed slowly, "I needed you too, I needed respect. I needed to be treated like family, not funding. I needed to be seen." That never happened. I paused, read it again, then I added one last line. "I hope you find your way, but it won't be through me." I sent it, then I blocked the number. My hands didn't shake, my chest didn't tighten. I felt sad but not guilty. There's a difference. Sadness means you cared. Guilt means you think you were wrong. I knew I wasn't. Something people don't talk about enough is what happens after you set a boundary. They act like it's just pain, just loneliness. But that's not true. Sometimes space is fertile. In the quiet that followed, my life didn't shrink. It expanded. I started traveling, not to escape but to experience. Places I'd only ever seen on postcards, streets where nobody knew my past, only who I was in the moment. I learned how much I enjoyed my own company. I spent money on things that fed me instead of drained me. A good mattress, fresh flowers every week, classes that made my hands messy and my mind calm. I built friendships that weren't based on obligation. Women who asked how I was and waited for the answer. People who invited me places without needing anything in return. And slowly, something else changed. I stopped replaying conversations in my head, stopped wondering if I'd done too much or not enough. I realized how much emotional energy I'd spent trying to earn a place I already deserved. Letting go didn't make me hard. It made me lighter. I still loved her in a distant, abstract way, the way you love someone you no longer trust with your heart. But I no longer shaped my life around that love. I shaped it around peace. Sometimes, late in the evening, I sit by the window and think about that wedding, about the photos, the ones I wasn't allowed to be in. For a long time, that hurt carried a sharp edge, like proof that I'd failed some invisible test. But now I see it differently. Those pictures captured a moment built on appearances, on perfection, on money and performance. They didn't capture truth. The real picture, the one that matters, is quieter. It's me in my living room, laughing with friends who chose me without conditions. It's me standing in front of a painting I made myself, hands still smelling like acrylic. It's me waking up without dread, without bracing for the next request. It's me finally understanding this. You don't lose people when you stop funding their behavior. You lose illusions. I'm older now, and wiser. And more careful with my heart, but I'm also freer than I've ever been. I no longer pay to belong. I belong because I'm here, and that's enough. If this story stayed with you, if any part of it felt familiar, please know you're not alone. Take a moment to like this video so more people who need stories like this can find it. Subscribe to the channel for weekly, real-life inspired stories about truth, boundaries, healing, and quiet strength. And if you feel safe, share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. I read everyone. Stories like this don't end when the video stops. If you believe stories can protect, awaken, and heal, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter. Every subscribe helps this channel keep telling the stories others are afraid to tell. Before you go, ask yourself, have you ever been made to doubt your worth or watched someone you love be taken for granted? Did you see the warning signs before the truth came out? Until next time, protect your peace, trust your instincts, and never let anyone else decide your value. Stay aware, stay strong.